Have you ever felt pains that seemed inexplicable? Headaches, a tightness in your chest, an inexplicable weight on your mind, and a fatigue that doesn't go away even after resting? For many, this is just stress. For others, anxiety. But for those set apart by God, these pains are not normal. They are spiritual signs. They are invisible warnings that reveal a conflict that doesn't happen in your flesh, but in your spirit. And today, I'm going to show you the 6 pains that only God's chosen ones feel. And more than seeing them, you will realize that these pains are actually confirmation that you have been chosen by God. But first, comment below, "I am chosen by God," so that the entire spiritual realm may witness your path. Let's go to the video. The first spiritual pain of the chosen ones is the constant weight on their minds. It's not just excessive thinking, it's a spiritual overload. People chosen by God often feel mentally weary even without apparent reason. There are days when their heads ache, concentration fails, and silence seems too noisy. The prophet Elijah, even though he was a man powerfully used by God, reached the point of asking for his own death because of the emotional and spiritual weight he carried, as recorded in 1 Kings chapter 19. This reveals that the mind is also a spiritual battlefield. The second spiritual pain is tingling in the hands and arms, accompanied by a feeling of weakness. This does not automatically mean physical illness. Often it is the body reacting to intense spiritual tension. Jeremiah declared that there was a fire burning in his bones when he tried to remain silent, as recorded in the book of Jeremiah chapter 20. When God calls someone and that person tries to resist, the body manifests the conflict. The third spiritual pain is persistent weariness. A person sleeps but wakes up tired. They rest but don't feel restored. This happens because the soul is being challenged. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 11 that only He can give true rest. When physical rest doesn't solve the problem, it's because the soul is crying out for spiritual alignment. Scholars argued that God's calling does not isolate human beings from suffering, but rather places them on a deeper level of spiritual responsibility. These pains are not signs of abandonment. They are signs of choice. God never wastes pain. He uses pressure to generate maturity, discernment, and spiritual authority. The first letter of Peter, chapter 5, states that after suffering comes refinement. The fourth spiritual pain that only God's chosen ones feel is the constant sensation of displacement. Nothing seems quite in its place. The person is in familiar environments, with people they know, but feels they don't completely belong in that space. There is a silent emptiness, a restlessness that cannot be explained with words. This is not ingratitude nor emotional confusion. It is the spirit realizing that it was not made to settle down. The Bible declares in Hebrews chapter 11 that God's servants recognize themselves as strangers and pilgrims on earth. Those who have been set apart by God never feel completely comfortable in a system that does not glorify the Creator. This pain often manifests as anguish in the chest, tightness in the heart, and a feeling of emotional heaviness without apparent cause. It is the spirit reacting to incompatibility with the world. Jesus stated in the Gospel of John, chapter 15, that the chosen ones do not belong to the world, therefore the world rejects them. This rejection does not always come from people. Sometimes it comes from the environment, from routine, from structures. It is a silent but profound pain. The fifth spiritual pain is loneliness even when surrounded by people. The chosen one converses, smiles, works, but feels that no one truly understands what is going on inside him. This loneliness is not social, it is spiritual. David expressed this several times in the Psalms, declaring that his soul was downcast and troubled, even though he was king and surrounded by multitudes, as in Psalm 42:5. Those who carry a calling also carry a level of depth that few can reach. This loneliness hurts because the spirit matures faster than the relationships around it. God separates, heals, molds, and deepens, while many around remain superficial. The sixth spiritual pain is the internal conflict between obedience and giving up. The chosen one feels the urge to stop, to be silent, to abandon everything, but something within prevents it. There are days when faith seems heavy, prayer seems difficult, and reading the Word requires effort. Even so, the spirit persists. Paul described this conflict in Romans chapter 7, when he speaks of the inner struggle between spiritual will and human weakness. This pain does not destroy, it refines. Many experience intense headaches during these periods. Others feel weakness in their legs, mild tremors, momentary shortness of breath, or sudden fatigue. This does not mean a lack of faith. It means spiritual intensity. The body reacts when the spirit is being stretched beyond its comfort zone. Job went through this. His body became ill, his mind was strained, but his faith was refined, as described in the book of Job, chapter 23, verse 10. Bible scholars assert that the suffering of the righteous is never wasted. Theologians said that God trains his soldiers in the most difficult fields because they are the ones who will face the most decisive battles. These spiritual pains don't mean something is wrong with your faith. On the contrary, they reveal that God is working in the deepest layers of your being. 2 Corinthians chapter 4 verse 16 states that even when the body wears down, the inner being is renewed day by day. The wear and tear is external, but the growth is internal. Some people try to medicate spiritual pain with distractions, overwork, or forced silence, but this only delays the process. God does not remove pain without first fulfilling its purpose. The pain of the chosen one is not punishment, it is training. It is not abandonment, it is preparation. It is not a sign of failure, it is evidence of alignment. If you recognize these pains in your journey, it reveals spiritual sensitivity. Many live numb, unaware of anything. The chosen ones feel because they are spiritually alive. Pain is proof of sensitivity, not weakness. Jesus wept, felt anguish, sweated blood in Gethsemane, according to the Gospel of Luke, chapter 22, verse 44. Feeling is not a sin, running away from the purpose is. Those who persevered this far demonstrate a thirst for spiritual understanding. Write in the comments, "I am a child of God." This declaration strengthens your spiritual identity. There is a final spiritual pain that definitively separates the chosen ones from the rest. A pain that precedes authority, clarity, and spiritual positioning. It is the pain of inner rupture. This pain arises when God begins to uproot the chosen one from old structures, old patterns, old emotional and spiritual dependencies. It is not something external, no one sees it, but inside, everything is being reorganized. It's as if something is being deconstructed to make way for something new. This pain doesn't scream, it squeezes. It doesn't bleed on the outside, but it bleeds on the inside. This spiritual pain often manifests as momentary confusion, a feeling of loss of former identity, and even crying spells without a clear explanation. The chosen one begins to realize that they no longer fit into environments, conversations, and practices that once seemed normal. This is not spiritual pride. It is separation. God is removing what does not sustain the purpose. The prophet Isaiah describes this process when he states that the Lord breaks old covenants to establish a new way, as found in the book of Isaiah, chapter 43, verses 18 and 19. At this stage, many experience more intense headaches, pressure in the back of the neck, a feeling of heaviness in the shoulders, and sudden weakness. This happens because the spirit is being repositioned. The body reacts when the soul undergoes realignment. Jacob experienced something similar when he wrestled with the angel and came out limping, as described in the book of Genesis, chapter 32, verses 24 to 31. He entered one way and came out another. Pain marked the transition. Another profound spiritual pain is the feeling of injustice. The chosen one does what is right, walks with God, but seems to suffer more than those who live far from the truth. This generates an internal conflict that is difficult to manage. The psalmist Asaph expressed exactly this in Psalm 73, when he confessed that he almost lost his footing upon seeing the prosperity of the wicked while the righteous were afflicted. This pain does not come from envy, but from the search for understanding. God allows this internal conflict because he desires spiritual maturity. Childish faith only asks when the blessing arrives. Mature faith asks what God is forming. The pain of the chosen ones teaches us to trust in God's character, not just in the results. Job went through this level of pain. He didn't understand the reason for his suffering, but he maintained his integrity before God, as described in the book of Job, chapter 1, verse 22. There is also the spiritual pain of constant vigilance. The chosen one cannot live in spiritual relaxation. There is continuous attention, a heightened sensitivity. Any heavy atmosphere is perceived. Any discordant word is unsettling. Any separation from God generates immediate discomfort. This is tiring, this is burdensome, but this is protective. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 26, verse 41, that it is necessary to watch and pray because the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Those who have been awakened can no longer sleep spiritually. Scholars claimed that God never deeply uses someone he hasn't deeply wounded before. Not wounded to destroy, but wounded to empty them of ego, self-sufficiency, and human dependence. This spiritual pain also manifests as a difficulty in being satisfied with spiritual superficiality. The chosen one is not content with shallow messages, automatic practices, or mechanical faith. There is a hunger for depth, for truth, for biblical understanding. This generates frustration in many religious environments, but it deeply pleases God. The Gospel of John, chapter 4, verse 23, states that God seeks worshipers who worship Him in spirit and in truth. Many try to silence this pain by distracting themselves, keeping themselves too busy, or avoiding moments of solitude. But this pain grows when it is ignored. It only finds relief when the chosen one surrenders completely to God's process. The letter to the Hebrews, chapter 12, verse 11, declares that no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but later it produces a harvest of righteousness. If you feel your life is being squeezed, reduced, silenced, and at the same time deepened, this is not a setback. It is God taking you to a level where fewer people can walk. It is at this point that many give up, not because they lack faith, but because they cannot endure the level of surrender required. Jesus made it clear in Luke chapter 9, verse 23, that following Him requires denying oneself. The ultimate spiritual pain is the deepest, the most silent, and the most decisive of all. It is the pain of God's silence. It is not the absence of divine presence. It is not rejection. It is not abandonment. It is when God chooses not to speak, even when the chosen one continues praying, seeking, fasting, obeying, and remaining faithful. This pain pierces the soul because it touches precisely the most sensitive point of faith: the dependence on God's voice to continue walking. At this stage, the chosen one doesn't lose faith, but loses comfort. The heart continues to believe, but the emotions become dry. Prayer doesn't flow as before. Reading the Word requires perseverance. Praise continues, but without tears. God's presence isn't felt in the same way. Even so, the person remains. This pain is not common. It doesn't happen to just any Christian. It only reaches those whom God has decided to mature deeply, those whom He is preparing to carry spiritual authority and sound discernment. The prophet Habakkuk experienced exactly this process. He cried out, shouted, questioned, and for a time received no answer. Heaven seemed closed. Even so, he did not abandon his spiritual position, as recorded in the book of Habakkuk, chapter 1, verses 2 to 4. God's silence was not rejection, but preparation. God was teaching that the righteous do not live by what they feel, but by what they believe, and that true faith remains even when there are no explanations. During this period of silence, the body reacts intensely. Many chosen ones report persistent headaches, mental pressure, a feeling of heaviness in the chest, weakness upon waking, extreme fatigue even after hours of rest, and a profound sadness without apparent cause. This is not merely emotional, it is spiritual. It is the spirit being led to a level of faith that does not depend on immediate answers or sensations. It is the final maturation before spiritual stability. Jesus Christ experienced this pain. On the cross, He cried out to the Father and received no answer at that moment, according to the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 27, verse 46. The silence did not signify the Father's absence, but the perfect fulfillment of the plan of redemption. If Christ Himself faced God's silence, this confirms that this pain is part of the path for those who walk more deeply with the Lord. This spiritual pain marks a definitive transition. Before it, the chosen one seeks God expecting to feel something. After it, they seek because they know who God is. God's silence destroys faith based solely on emotions and strengthens faith grounded in the eternal truth of the Word. The second letter to Timothy, chapter 1, verse 12, declares that whoever knows in whom they have believed remains steadfast, even when they do not understand what is happening around them. Respected scholars recognize this spiritual pattern throughout Christian history. When this pain is endured, something definitively changes within the chosen one. Fear diminishes. The need for human approval loses its power. People's opinions cease to govern decisions. The chosen one begins to walk with spiritual security, not because all problems have been solved, but because trust in God has been unshakably rooted. The book of Isaiah, chapter 30, verse 21, affirms that even when the eyes do not see and the ears do not perceive, the Lord continues to guide the way. This is the pain that definitively separates the chosen ones from those who only superficially follow the faith. Many retreat here, many give up, many interpret the silence as divine rejection. But those who remain cross the valley and emerge transformed. Job, after a long period of silence, declared that before he knew God only by hearsay, but now he knew him deeply and truly, as recorded in the book of Job, chapter 42, verse 5. God's silence is not punishment, it is advanced intimacy. God entrusts silence only to those who can endure it. He does not test to destroy, he tests to establish. After this pain, spiritual discernment, inner authority, and clarity of purpose are born. The chosen one begins to walk not by signs, but by direction, not by emotions, but by conviction, not by haste, but by obedience. Those who go through this phase begin to see pain in a different way. They understand that God never wastes suffering. Everything is used to build character, maturity, and true dependence. The first letter of Peter, chapter 5, verse 10, states that after suffering for a little while, God perfects, strengthens, establishes, and sets them apart. Silence is only a season, not the final destination. May Jesus Christ be recognized as Lord and Savior. If you have not yet received Him, open your heart now, confess with your mouth, believe in your heart, and surrender your life to Him. Find a church near your home, attend church, walk in fellowship, and grow in faith. Subscribe to the channel, share this content, and keep moving forward. May God bless your life, your home, and your family in the name of Jesus.